a position of strength because you want depth at that position. If Jalen Hurts continues to play this way, you can't have him and Carson Wentz on your team next year. And Carson Wentz with that massive cap hit, you may have to look at doing something with him if Jalen Hurts continues to play this way, because he played at a winning level for the second consecutive week.
Okay, so now what happens regarding Wentz? Just to get everybody up to speed, there was so much sports this weekend. It was like sports overload with college football, the college basketball, the NFL. You may have missed this. There was a report from Adam Schefter yesterday morning that essentially said that if he is going to be the backup, this, of course, speaking of Wentz, that he wanted out. Later in the day, there was some reporting late in the evening that wasn't particularly the case. We got to get through the rest of the season. The first two games here from Hurts indicate it's going to be his job, at least the rest of the way. Common sense would tell you. So if you have those dueling narratives out there, all that money sitting on the bench, Hurts playing well, all of this swirling, what do you do with Wentz?
Carson Wentz is going to want to start. He's too much of a competitor. He's accomplished too much at the NFL level. And to me, all signs point to Indianapolis. Indianapolis needs a young quarterback. He's had a ton of success with Frank Reich, their head coach, who is the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. It gets him a lot closer to where he's from in North Dakota. So, look, there's going to be a massive cap hit if and when the Eagles would trade him in the offseason, something that I'm sure they don't want to do, at least not initially. But Carson Wentz isn't going to want to sit there in the prime of his career to watch Jalen Hurts play. So they're going to have to work out the contract. They would have to work out the trade terms. A lot has to happen between now and next March. But to me, a lot of the signs point to, if Hurts continues to play the way he does, Carson Wentz possibly being traded to the Colts.
Mike, yesterday the Washington football team earlier in the day opened the door for the Giants to jump back into first place in the NFC East with a win. Obviously, the Giants didn't, but you saw some aggressive play calling from Joe Judge early on in that game. Were you on board with his decision to go for it on fourth downs?
I know you like Seattle, Chris, but my eyes, when I look at that defense, I still don't trust it. So I thought Dwayne Haskins would have played better, and despite his inconsistencies, because they have a one-game lead and because of a dominant front seven, I'm going with Washington.
Mike, pivoting to the AFC East, now that New England has officially been eliminated from playoff contention, what's next for that organization?
They have to have a long look at what they're doing at the quarterback position, which is something really remarkable. We haven't said that in over 20 years. I thought Cam Newton was going to be a perfect fit in New England. I thought it was a great signing. He just doesn't look like the same passer that he was 5 years ago when he was the league MVP. And I don't know if it's age or injuries. He's not the same guy. So again, the two intriguing players in free agency to me, because of their age and what they've done, are Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. Two players that have accomplished a fair amount in our league. And then if I'm New England, I got to think about using my first-round pick on maybe a quarterback, because they have to get that situation, that position solidified. Now, with that said, Chris, I was really surprised how poor they were on run defense. Give Miami a lot of credit. No Jakeem Grant, no Mike Gesicki, no Devontae Parker. They had to run the ball and win. They knew it. New England knew it. And New England can stop Miami's run, and give Miami a lot of credit for that. And for New England not to be able to stop the run is something that Coach Belichick has always stood for.
And lastly, a long, hard look at the quarterback position, something that Mike said, by the way, there's only one team in the AFC that has 6 wins. Only one. Just seems hard to wrap your mind around the fact that team is the New England Patriots. What a difference between the week 1 matchup between the Dolphins and the Pats and what we saw yesterday in the divergent directions these organizations are going, at least this year. So when you talk about it, Mike, a long, hard look, how long and how hard do you have to look at Cam Newton perhaps coming back?
Yeah, again, Zubin, I've been disappointed how he played. Yesterday there were a couple of times he missed some open receivers again. And maybe the last week of the season, if I'm Coach Belichick, maybe I also have to put Jared Stidham in and see what I have there. But I think if you ask New England from what they thought they were going to have with Cam Newton and how he played, I'm sure there's some disappointment in that building. Now, with that said, you could say, hey, let's bring him back maybe on another one-year deal. Let's go through a whole offseason. Let's build this entire offense from the run game to the play-action game around what Cam does well. Maybe an offseason program, and we'll do him and our offense a lot of good, and maybe we can revitalize his career next year. But I'm sure there's a lot of disappointment right now in Foxborough this morning because Cam Newton just hasn't played as well as they thought.
No doubt. It'll be a long wean for them. It's going to be a long week, literally and figuratively, because they won't play again until Monday Night Football. when they take on the team that over the weekend dethroned them and finally snapped their 11-year reign atop the AFC East. That'll be the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, New England, next Monday night on ESPN. Mike, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Let's go from A to Z.
From A to Z.
Straight Talk brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Adam Gase asked this after the game.
A win like this produces a lot of conflicting emotions because there's a large segment of the fan base that wanted you guys to lose out and get the number one pick. What do you say to those fans?
Hey, our job's to try to go out and win every week.
I think that's fair enough. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. Adam getting straight to it before we bring in Tannenbaum. And just my thought on it, Chris, is simply this. I mean, look, there's a handful of teams in the NFL that have gone 1-15. Nobody remembers them. They all do remember the 2017 Browns, and they remember the Lions, the 2-16 teams. And if they're all going to be shipped out the day the season ends or the day after the season ends, the last thing you want on that resume is any stench of an 0-16 season. A win is a win. 1-15, it sounds silly, is so much better than 0-16 when it comes to your future job prospects, especially when you know, why are we building for 2021? Most of us aren't even going to be here. Anyway, Mike Tannenbaum joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. So was a win a loss, Mike? What do you think?
I agree with what you just said. The coaches and players in that building, they're not worrying about next year. Everybody else is. And look, there's a massive gap from Trevor Lawrence to everybody else. And as I put out on social media yesterday, there's really a big gap between him and the last three number one picks when you think about Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield. That's how transcendent Trevor Lawrence is. So the task at hand, guys, right now, if I'm the Jets, is how good is Sam Darnold? Because I have to start thinking about names like Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, and now I go into the Kyle Trask. And there's a whole bunch of guys in college I have to look at, but it really starts with, what do I have in Sam Darnold?
Mr. T, if draft positions hold steady in the last 2 weeks of the season, if you were the general manager of this Jets team with the second overall pick, what would you do? Would you actually draft Justin Fields or one of those other quarterbacks, or would you try to trade down and get a bevy of picks to build out the rest of the roster?
Yeah, Chris, it's a great question. And as of now, I would still look at a quarterback, because Sam Darnold's had a number of years between USC and what he's done so far in the pros, and I still don't see a high-level, consistent, franchise-level quarterback. Now, in fairness, we could say that going back to USC through now, there hasn't been continuity, skill players, things that we've talked about quite a bit. But at some point, greatness has to shine through and say, I could elevate people around me. So to me, Justin Fields has a better ceiling than Sam Darnold, and certainly I would look at Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, Zach Wilson, and BYU, and I would strongly lean towards a quarterback. Now, with that said, Sam Darnold will have a chance to make a closing statement. He has a couple more weeks, and in fairness, this Jet team, as we know, should have beaten the Raiders and really had the Patriots on the ropes not that long ago as well. So it's not a slam dunk, but right now, I just don't see Sam Darnold being that elite player.
On the other side, real quick with the Rams, I know it's a one-off. They're not that bad. They're going to the playoffs. It is a little jarring. McVay used the word embarrassing. Just inside of front office, just for 1 second on the Rams, what's the feeling inside there right now with Les Snead and Sean McVay? Yeah, it's a clunker, but this was a clunker for the ages.
Zubin, it's devastating. And Sean McVay kind of shine light on that a little bit. It's devastating in that building today because you're trying to win the division. You have Seattle, you have Arizona, and you're looking at this game as, we're going to win. A 17-point favorite at home, unacceptable, can't happen. So we'll see if it's just a 1 week sort of bump in the road, or maybe this is who they really are. They're a tough evaluation for me because they were dominant against the Patriots not that 2 weeks ago, and for this to happen is really unacceptable.
Mike T, another great performance by Jalen Hurts. Even though the Eagles don't get the win, it comes down to the wire out there in the desert. If you're the Eagles, what do you do with Carson Wentz? Do you go into the offseason with a quarterback competition, or is Jalen Hurts doing enough to say that this is his team going into 2021?